Want to welcome you to this Friday edition of Table Talk. Luke and I are here, the bearded boys, and so we wanted to take some time today to chat with you. Before we do that, again, as always, so grateful that we've been able to connect with you on the phone, by texts, emails, and I just want to encourage you, if you have a prayer request, as always, we would love for you to just go to our homepage, cbcilderton.ca. Under the prayer tab, um, you can click the Care Connection, and the Care Connection is where you can submit prayer requests. Either they can go out to the congregation as a whole, or you can do that just to the staff and elders. We're always glad to pray for you. And on this Friday afternoon, we've got a little bit of snow in the air. And with Friday that's not looking quite so pleasant, sometimes we want to hunker down and stay inside a little bit more. So that just makes thinking about when we're inside these days all the more important about how do we live and how do we flourish in these digital days. In these digital days, everything is online. Prayer meeting is online. Our services are online. You can do a ton of things online. And today, because we want to think about these days, these digital days, we want to recognize that we want to make the most of these days, as Paul talks about in Ephesians 5, being wise, not foolish, because the days are evil. And so we want to redeem the time. So today, what I wanted to do is just take some time here, Luke, and just chat with you a little bit as we think about these digital days. I know you've been thinking a little bit about some scriptural principles that would kind of help guide us today.
Yeah, whenever I think about using technology in whatever way that we're using it, whether that is to watch a church service, whether we're using technology to educate our children while we're all home trying to do homeschooling for parents who are wanting to educate their kids, I think about what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6. I'm thinking specifically of verse 12 where Paul says, "All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything." And I've, I'm just aware that so much of technology these days, whether it's social media, whether it's smartphones, whether it's YouTube, there are a lot of very smart people designing these things to be dominating, to take
Mm,
over your time and to kind of work against your brain to stick you in it and to make it difficult to step away. And as we're thinking about using technology, technology is a wonderful tool. It can be used for great, great things, but I'm just mindful that it has the capacity to dominate. And that's something that we want to be aware of as we're using technology in its various forms and facets.
In light of that, we are really, because of our current situation, we are dependent upon digital technology in a way that is unlike ever before. And Luke, I wanted to think about three areas where we could use technology in a way that would really benefit us. I want to think about, first off, education. So, moms and dads are at home. There's even those lifelong learners, regardless of age, who are thinking, I need to make the most of the time right now. What would be some educational tools that you'd love to recommend to families, to lifelong learners?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are lots of great online educational resources that I am personally aware of. A couple that come to mind straight off the bat. There are two great YouTube channels. One called SciShow, SCISHOW, and one called Crash Course. There are the SciShow and Crash Course channels for kind of adults, young adults, and then there are kids versions of those channels as well. And they are fantastic, well-produced educational videos that go through all sorts of educational disciplines from from biology and physics to psychology and sociology and just about everything in between. They're very accessible, very well made. They're easy to access on YouTube and great resources, whether you are trying to educate your children full time, whether your family is homeschooling and looking for things to do, or whether you and your kids just want to do something enjoyable and learn something together. It's good for adults, it's good for children, and very, very good quality educational content. Of course, just like with any public schooling, the worldview of these programs are it's of course coming from a secular worldview. So as Christian parents, you may want to be a little bit careful, or at least ready to add scriptural principles to what's being learned. And then one more resource that I can recommend, there's a fantastic YouTuber whose name is Mark Rober, Mark Rober, who is experimenting with some sort of online science classes. He's doing these 30-minute live stream science classes that are a lot of fun. My wife and I have been watching them, and we've been enjoying them quite a bit. So great ways for the family to learn together in whatever capacity they would like.
I'll mention a few that I would encourage you to check out. There's a couple of museums that you might want to tour virtually. The Rockwell Museum. By the way, we'll put up the links in the comments afterwards so that you can find many of these resources easily. The Louvre in France, you can check out their collection of art. Maybe you have someone in your house who loves space. The spacecenter.org has an app that is really fantastic. It's produced by NASA. Um, One of my favorite locations that I've visited is the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. And the animals, the sea animals there are unbelievable. And their Facebook page has some wonderful live stream videos as to what's going on. Or maybe you have a kid who loves the animals in the zoo. The San Diego Zoo has some great live streams as well of some of their animals. One of my favorite places on the West Coast, my brother, when he lived out in California, he took me to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And I'll put up a link to the Monterey Bay Aquarium because they have some incredible live cams there as well, which you'll find fascinating. And for that little one or that boy who likes to tinker and put things together, I want to recommend there's a virtual tour of Legoland. And Legoland is always a great place to check out.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of resources there for you, for your kids, your grandkids to check out. But I'm also thinking, Luke, a lot of people, they're trying to figure out the best platform to use when they're talking with other people. So we just had Easter. Some people are using various platforms. What would you recommend for someone if they're trying to connect with communication?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, so many of us are home. So many of us are wanting to reach out to our friends and families who we aren't able to see. There are so many options of platforms that you can use to do that. Many have their various upsides and downsides. The first and most obvious one, which isn't even necessarily super technological, would be you can, of course, always just use your phone. Phone systems are easy to understand. We've all got phones. They're nice and secure and don't have all of the sort of technical insecurities that maybe other systems might have. If you're talking about video chat, if you're wanting to do things on your computer, if especially if you're an Apple user, if you have an iPhone, if you have an iPad or a MacBook laptop, FaceTime is a wonderful and very secure system to use for communicating with friends and family. You really can't get more secure than FaceTime, and so if that's an option available to you, would highly recommend that. If you aren't an Apple user, you would have options such as Skype and such as Zoom. Skype would again be a more secure system. We know we've been hearing on the news that Zoom maybe has some of its own concerns, and if those are concerns that you have, something like FaceTime, something like Skype, something like just picking up your phone and making a phone call might be better options for you. Zoom is a particularly good platform if you have lots of people. If you want to have more than two people in a call, more than four people in a call, Zoom is a very powerful platform for that. But if you're just looking to talk with your kids or talk with your parents or your cousins, you're just trying to have one-on-one, there's lots of options. Skype, FaceTime, and phone are all fantastic options for that.
Yeah, who would have thought, Zoom would be such a great platform? If only we could go back 6, 8 weeks and buy shares in Zoom right now. We'd all be just laughing, wouldn't we? We want to
Yeah.
think as well about discipleship because it's not just having connection points and talking with one another. Great suggestions, by the way, Luke. I was FaceTiming with my brother in Ottawa, and I know that he's set up. I was telling this to Luke earlier, but he set up a camera, or a friend has set up a camera so that they can play a board game with their friends nearby, and so they've got a common board and a screen, and they can do that. But it's not just communication we want to think about. We also want to think about some effective discipleship tools. And what would be some great tools that you'd recommend, regardless of age, maybe young, old? What would be some great tools that families could use, lifelong learners could use to keep growing in the faith?
Yeah.
Besides table talk.
Right. Besides Table Talk and besides our Sunday services, which if you aren't watching, I would highly recommend them. A couple of things come to mind. First, for families, for parents with young children, you've probably already been hearing from me that Lifeway is putting out fantastic resources, Sunday school lessons for kids. They have activity sheets, they have discussion guides for parents, and if you are not receiving that from me and you are interested in receiving that from me, please do email me, let me know. They're coming out with fantastic Sunday school content each week. Another group of people making fantastic content would be the Bible Project. The Bible Project is a wonderful project that makes all sorts of fantastic videos. And right now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, they are also coming out with weekly studies. These are not so much age specific. They can be used for small groups, for family Bible studies, for parents and children, really for just about anybody. Once a week, they're coming out with great videos, discussion questions, all sorts of great content. You can go on thebibleproject.com and they're right at the very, very top of their website. You can have access to all of those things, and they're doing a fantastic job.
And if you're an audio listener, there's all sorts of podcasts that are out there. I know both Luke and I enjoy listening to Dr. Moeller, albertmoeller.com. He has The Briefing, a daily take, a Christian take on the news. You can always be checking out 5 Minutes in Church History, which just gives you a little snapshot on a figure in church history or an event in church history. And it'll be amazing how much you can grow in your knowledge of how God has been working in our history through his people. So those would be just two I'd recommend. I'm not a big podcast listener. Just time often limits us in terms of what we can do. Because of that, though, we do recognize, Luke. I think after COVID is done, there'll be still this draw towards the digital world, and yet we want to be mindful that I think, like as John says in his second epistle, Second John, verse 12, he says, "Though I write to you with pen and ink, I long to see you face to face." And so, what would be some things just to be mindful of even now that we're not becoming people consumed by the digital world, just as you were reminding us at the beginning?
Yeah, certainly. As we're all at home, as we are sitting in our we're back.
All right, we're back. We had a little bit of technical issue there. Apparently, one of the issues has been my socks. They're very distracting, and some of you are commenting about how polka dotted they are. I just, I'm here for your entertainment, apparently. So, not only for your edification. Anyway, if you're able to join us back again, one of the last things that we just wanted to take about 5 minutes to do is to talk a little bit about in these digital days, how are we going to respond post pandemic? Because if we're going online so much, we want to be mindful that the post pandemic world will have certain challenges and temptations for us. John says in 2 John, verse 12, that though I write to you with pen and ink, I long to see you face to face. And so we recognize that being together, being face to face is really important. And as you think about that, Luke, what are some things that, while we're living a lot online these days, what are some things that just you would have as reminders to us as we think about the post digital time that we're living in?
Right, yeah. While we're all at home, while we're all taking in so much of church life from the comfort of our homes, one of the things that we have lost is the opportunities to serve. So many of us, when we come to church, there are needs here on a Sunday morning, whether it's with hospitality, whether it's with children's ministry, whether it's on the worship team. There are so many needs and so many ways to serve that are no longer open. And when, in many ways, when we're at home, when the Sunday service is on our television screen, there's nowhere to serve. There aren't needs in that way, and it can be easy to get into that habit and get into that rut and not sort of continue to be serving both during this pandemic, and then I think it'll be hard and will require some intentionality to get back into that. And so even right now, as we're home, as we're isolated, as serving in the body of Christ becomes so much more difficult than it was before. We have to ask ourselves, in what ways can we be serving rather than just being served? In the same way, when we are able to gather again, it may be jarring to go back to having all these opportunities to serve and to think about coming to church, not just to receive, not just to watch the music and watch the preaching, but also to think about who you can minister to, who you can bless on any Sunday morning. I think it's going to there's going to be momentum against that we're going to have to maybe be fighting against during this time and then after this time as well.
One of the great resources, Luke, that I've found and enjoyed is this little book. I don't know if you can see it there, but it's called The Tech Wise Family by Andy Crouch. And Andy has given a lot of thought to how we can, the subtitle of the book is Everyday Steps for Putting Technology in its Proper Place. And what I love about this little book, it's not very big, it's not very thick either. It's a great tool that gets you thinking about the danger of digital technology is that we become consumers rather than producers. And so, what Andy Crouch talks about is there's one, a danger of isolation with modern technology. It used to be that when I was a boy, when mom and dad put on the cassette tape in the car, it played to the whole family. Now I can take my phone, put my earphones in, and I've got my own private experience of watching, listening, and I don't have to affect anyone. While that's an advantage, it means that we are further isolated. The fact that these are called iPhones means it's about me. The second thing is that we want to encourage, and Andy Crouch talks about this really well. We want to promote creativity rather than just consumption. So it's no surprise right now. What's the common thing that's missing from grocery stores, Luke? What are you trying hard to find?
A few things, but toilet paper is the biggest one right now.
And yeast.
And yeast, yeah.
And I know My wife was talking to your wife to try and get
Vanilla, yeah.
vanilla extract. And so I think there is this return to being a baker, and everybody wants to produce, and that's a good thing. And I hope that you come out of this current situation a better baker, and I hope more of you make pies. I would absolutely endorse that. I would love to taste your excellent pie crust post-pandemic. Um, but also think about how you can create spaces in your home that are maybe digital free zones. So Andy Crouch talks about in their living room, they don't have a TV, they don't have music players, they don't use their phones. Instead, what they do is their living room is full of craft supplies. It's got a piano. It's got the things where you can be a creator because God has made us in his image to be creative people. So we've probably taken more than 20 minutes today, and you've admired my socks, and you probably are looking at Luke and I and our good beards, and we're just grateful that we're able to join you in your home and take this time on Table Talk to encourage you. If you've got a topic, by the way, that you'd love for us to talk about, would you just put that right in the comments below? And we'll make sure that we get some links to the resources that we were mentioning earlier. We're looking forward to worshiping together in our own homes, but by the Spirit on Sunday. Pastor Gary will be preaching from 1 Peter chapter 2. We're looking forward to that. Would you prepare your hearts and pray that God would meet you and minister to you for this weekend? Until Tuesday, when we come back with Table Talk, God bless you and have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.